My new house aide thought it was a good idea to cook my snakes unthawed rats instead of the squash I asked her to, and all she could say was, "I'm sorry, this has never happened before." Like, yeah, I hope it's never happened before. I have to get this out, because today feels like an actual nightmare I keep expecting to wake up from. I'm disabled, and need help with stuff around the house. Today was the second day with a new agency and new home health aide, Tina. I set it up so she would come by in the morning while I'm sleeping. Insomnia is killer, and I texted her last night what I would need done today. One of those things was to roast some pre-cut squash I'd gotten so I could have it with my salads and pasta. I was very clear in my instructions, what it looked like, where it was in the fridge, how to use the oven, how to cook it. I also have a roommate who was up and told her she could ask them for help if she couldn't find anything. Or come get me if truly necessary. Now, I have 3 pet ball pythons. They eat rats that I thaw from frozen in the fridge in a reusable plastic bag. Yes, that's where I'm going with this. Tina couldn't find the squash, and so, obviously, that meant she should roast the first other thing she could see that was technically also encased in plastic, in a completely different area of the fridge. The effing rats. In butter and salt, in my nice baking dish. And that's insane all on its own, but if you're going to cook any animal, you should at least clean and skin it first, right? Do the crazy, disgusting thing properly so I can respect the effort, instead of sticking them in as is. Fur and guts and all. And the smell. Good God, baby Jesus, the smell. It woke me up and had me gagging the moment I opened my bedroom door. Definitely not squash. Or food smelling for that matter. At first I thought the squash had spontaneously rotted overnight and she'd tried to cook it anyway. That would have been slightly less insane and much preferable. I had to pull it out of her what she was cooking instead when she said she couldn't find it. It was in plain sight. Had to open the oven and see my snake's dinners in place of my own and still couldn't process what the F was happening, what I was looking at and smelling. I don't like yelling at people and generally avoid it. Today was a day for exceptions. And at the end of my half-crazed, dissociative rant, I told her to get the whole dish and its contents and herself out of the house. And to not come back. Suffice to say, I've contacted the agency to report it and am requesting a new aide. Now I'm sitting at a cafe trying to calm down and eat something despite the scent memory that's taken up permanent residence and turning my stomach. The whole house reeks like musty, sewage-dipped pork that had been left out for a whole day before being cooked in rancid oil, and I'm not sure Febreze is gonna cut it. I don't want to go home. Update: vertical bar. Apologies for the late update. As I'm sure you can imagine, the last week was exhausting. This is just to give what closure I can and go over how my last conversation with Tina went, the day after the incident. When I was on my way to the cafe to escape the house last Tuesday, she actually texted me with an apology, saying, "I'm so sorry, I feel so stupid and bad, this never happened before," and offering to pay me back for the rats and the dishes I had mentioned the rats were expensive. Which is honestly more than I was expecting, but, never happened before. Well, I sure hope so. Though that begs the question, why now? Why me? I don't know if there's a good answer. We agreed that she could come by the next day in the evening with the money, $15 for the rats, $30 for the dish. She declined to do Venmo or something similar. Possibly didn't know how to use things like that, since I estimate by her comment of her grandson being my age, she had to be at a minimum in her late 60s, probably older. I admit I was hesitant to have her return to the scene of the crime when it was still so unclear what her motivations had truly been, but I wouldn't be home alone, and she had seemed sincerely contrite, if a bit defensive over the degree of my outrage. Before the appointed time, she called me to tell me she was on her way, and then made, of all things, a request of me. She would be brought by her timesheet, and could I sign for the 2 days she'd been there? I was baffled. The audacity of asking me a favor when our meeting was about her making amends, claiming that her time with me should count as doing her job, and implying that her paying me back was to get something from me. Maybe that was why she wanted to do cash? But at this point, I just wanted the whole thing over and done with, and it's not like I was the one who'd be paying her, just my insurance. It was also confusing because, did that mean that she was still employed? Surely if she'd been fired, she'd be less willing to play nice with me, would probably be blaming me more for how it affected her. At the very least, she seemed like the kind of person who would bring it up to make me feel a little bad. But maybe she wouldn't, I don't know. It was also strange because out of the 3, now 4, HHAs I've had at 2 different companies, none have ever asked me to sign a timesheet for them. Maybe some of y'all more familiar with the inner workings of these companies can shed some light here. I was nervous when she showed up. There's something about seeing someone do something so truly unhinged that shatters the basic trust that this fellow human won't do something else crazy, maybe something more harmful than running one out of the house. So I checked her hands through the window before I opened the door. She had 2 plastic bags half full and bundled up to hide their contents under each arm. Strange choice for a weapon, so I chose faith. There was no more apology upon greeting, she mostly just seemed in a hurry, civil but brusque, like she wanted this behind her as much as I did. While she was rummaging, I asked how she disposed of the dish. And as expected, the first thing she brought out was her timesheet. Sure enough, there was a place for patient's signature, and as I took it into the proffered pen and set it against the doorframe to sign, I said, "We said $45, right? Just to confirm." The look she gave me as she reached into her jacket was so offended, and her civility evaporated. Like I was questioning her word, and how dare I? "I'm gonna pay you," I said I would. "Calm down, paranoid," was the tone. It took all my self-control not to respond with, "You also said you'd cook the squash." Like, yeah, lady, wonder why I would want to triple-check anything we agreed to at this point. My bad. But she did in fact hand me the wad of bills, after I'd handed back the timesheet and she'd checked it, and then she left in a bit of a huff. I just told her to take care of herself to her back. At this point, after interacting with her again, I am of the opinion that this was simply from some form of psychosis, either a mental health thing or senility, I don't know. Even talking to her, things were just a little off. Hard to describe, but it was like part of her attention was always somewhere else. I do not believe this was malicious or weaponized incompetence as many were saying in the TikTok comments. She had nothing to gain from this, and clearly she wants to keep her job. At this point, after the shock and horror has worn off, I just feel kind of bad for her. She clearly shouldn't be in this profession, which, BTW, she said she's been in for 30 years. So I more blame these companies for not being more thorough in their hiring and training process. Psych evils should be par for the course, surely. And I know I probably shouldn't have, it's none of my business, but it was eating at my conscience to not express my concern. Because I don't know what's going on in her life. When it comes to things like reality breaks and changes in behavior, it can be really hard to see for ourselves, and maybe the people in her life aren't saying anything, and so she's not seeking the help she needs. So I texted her a little while after she left. I thanked her for taking responsibility, acknowledged I was butting in, and then brought up how she said this had never happened before and how she'd seemed confused about how it happened. And that if this was a new kind of thing or there'd been other weird things happening, it might be a good idea to talk to a doctor, just in case something else is going on that needs to be addressed, as gently and non-judgmentally as I could think to say. And I ended it with, "But if I'm way off base and out of line, and you're just used to people eating like that, I apologize and wish you the best." After a day of silence, she sent 2 texts, copied here. "K, thank you, people make mistakes. God bless, have a good day." That was and I'm sure will remain the last I heard from her. I'm sorry I can't recount some detailed confession about how it had all been a nefarious plot by some vengeful ex who'd had their aunt impersonate an aide to poison me. That would have made for a much more satisfying story. As for my current aide situation, I'm still working with the replacement they sent to me, but I've already requested a new one. Others have told me how long it can take to find a good fit, so I guess I'll just have to keep spinning the revolving door until I do. Also, I have put in a request for the agency to reimburse me the takeout I had to get myself that day. And the oven has been cleaned and sanitized to within an inch of its life and seems okay now? Thank you to everyone for taking an interest and for your support. It legitimately turned this into something more lighthearted that I can laugh at now, where it would have remained traumatic otherwise. May your squash always be squash, bye.